Hey there, friends. Steve from Vast Ice Gaming back again, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm bringing you my least favorite game on each platform that I've played, with the exception of PC, because that category is very broad and encompasses so many generations of gaming it would take virtually eons to narrow it down. But with each individual console, it's pretty easy to tell which game is the worst I've played. So, we're going to put every game in this little fireplace in a game that's called Little Inferno. I highly recommend it. It's very fun. And we're going to destroy these games in very creative ways. Well, mostly creative. First on the list is this. Mystery Quest for the NES. I rented this game when I was a child. And I thought it looked really cool. I mean, look at it. It's like a kid, and he's wearing a costume very similar to Link's, but it's red instead of green, and he's blasting a snake, and there's a castle and all kinds of other stuff going on. Really cool looking cover. Too bad the game is terrible. For one thing, as soon as you start, you're dying. You have a vitality meter that's constantly counting down. Now, some people would say, well, that's just like a timer in like Mario games. Okay, well, here's the thing. Timers in Mario games are numbers, and you can read them, and you can tell exactly how much time you have left. In this game, it's a bar that gradually counts down, and you constantly have to find like power-ups or food or whatever to keep the bar up so you don't die. Very hard to gauge sometimes. And not to mention, the game is just visually unappealing. It looks nowhere near as good as the front cover. Now, granted, games don't always look like the front cover. In fact, they frequently don't, but that's besides the point. This game hypes up something that's really trash. The gameplay is uninspired, to say the least. All the backgrounds look exactly the same. And, even as a child who was really good at games like these, I just didn't get that far because it just wasn't a good game. So, time for the ritual burning. Goodbye for the weekend you destroyed in my youth. Next game on the list, Yoshi for the Game Boy. For the original Game Boy back in the day, the greenish and black one. I got this game at Toys R Us. I won't go into the circumstances of how I got this instead of the game I wanted, but suffice to say, because of those circumstances, I missed out on the Kirby franchise because the game I really wanted was Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy. But for reasons I won't go into here, I wasn't able to get that game, and I got this instead. Now, to be fair, it's not a bad game, but I included it because I've never genuinely played a bad Game Boy game, and truthfully, I never owned that many. I only had Tetris, Super Mario Land, Yoshi, Yoshi's Cookie, and then later for Game Boy Color I had Pokemon Red. That was the extent of my Game Boy library. I mostly played consoles, and the same is true today. I really don't play handhelds that much. But, because of the messed up circumstances under which I got this game, I'll use one dinosaur to get rid of another. Are you ready? Good boy. Burn that game up. Yeah, there we go. Burn it to dust. Now, while these embers are dying out, we'll move on to our next one. Actraiser 2 for the Super Nintendo. Now, to be fair, some people might actually like this game, and I won't dog them for liking it, but here's why I think it's the worst SNES game I ever played. Because it's far, far inferior to the first game. Wouldn't you expect them to make a game that's far superior? I would. Here's the thing. The first Actraiser game had two parts. You had a platforming section, and then you had like an overhead sort of town building and management section, It almost had like some RPG aspects. But this game got rid of all of that. It's nothing but a platformer. And it also, I never got that far in this game because I just couldn't stand it, because I could not believe that they took away the simulation aspect. But the controls are kind of stiff, the gameplay is not that inspired, and from what I've heard, the gameplay also gets kind of really insane difficult towards the end. I don't know about that because I didn't make it that far because I just didn't want to play it anymore. So, Actraiser 2, this razor is for you. Ha 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 ha. Shredded to dust. Next game on the list. Pier Solar and the Great Architects for the Sega Genesis. Now this was made by an outfit called Watermelon Games years after the Sega Genesis had stopped production. And then it was ported to PC later via a Kickstarter. And I actually donated to this Kickstarter. So I didn't actually play it on the Genesis, but it was originally a Genesis game, so I'm going to include it here. I played it through Steam, but it was nowhere near what was promised. They said it was going to be an HD remake. Well, here's what happened. Only about half the game was HD. Some of the environments were hand-drawn and had that HD quality, but the character sprites were not. Many of the enemies were not. Many of the backgrounds were not. The gameplay itself was clunky. They have this stupid thing called gathering that makes you take extra turns in order to use your best abilities. The map system is on par with the original Legend of Zelda, where it's just that gray rectangle with a green dot in it. It was not a satisfying experience. And I felt bamboozled by having donated money to the Kickstarter. The only good things I could say about it is that the soundtrack is nice, and then the hand-drawn art in the cutscenes were nice. But that's all I could really say. The story is all over the place. They go for like puns that really aren't all that funny. They try to make other Sega game references in situations where it's not really appropriate. And then they also ripped off Phantasy Star 4, making Elsa Dion, the sword from that game, the strongest weapon you can get, but also very missable, which is artificial replay value if I've ever heard of it. So, Pier Solar, have some solar power. Yeah, there we go. That's what we're talking about. Next game on the list, F.R.E.A.K.S for the Nintendo 64. I got this game for my 16th birthday. It's a very mediocre fighting game. It was made by Midway, the same company that brought us Mortal Kombat. So you would expect another game of theirs to have the same polish and same playability, but no. This game is clunky. The graphics are uninspired. They try to introduce like systems where you can actually remove some of your opponent's limbs during the fight and things like that. But like the execution just isn't there. It just was not a fun game to play. I played it for maybe a week before I think I took it to Funko Land and traded it in. So F.R.E.A.K.S, have another freak. Mr. Leprechaun's going to share his freakiness with you. Ha 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 ha! Dissolved into dust. And Mr. Leprechaun, thank you for your service. And for the next game, we have Simpsons Wrestling for the PlayStation. Now, this game is nowhere near what you think it would be. Now, you'd think a game based on The Simpsons would be cool. And there are some good Simpsons games out there. There aren't many, but there are a few. This isn't one of them. It's basically a tournament fighter with a wrestling backdrop. The graphics are rather poorly done. You can tell that the characters are who they are, and they have the voice acting of the the actual characters. You know, there's no cheap knockoff voice actors trying to do imitations or anything like that. But it just wasn't a fun game to play, and I really can't recommend it. So here's what we're going to do with Simpsons Wrestling. We're going to take out our chainsaw, our nice fire-breathing chainsaw. Well, I would have liked for that to have lasted a little longer, but that's okay. Let's have some toy squirrels get chopped up instead. Here, how's that? You like that? Next game on the list. Haven, Call of the King for PlayStation 2. Now, I did not play this game when it first came out. I found out about it much later. But apparently, it was heavily hyped and was a commercial failure. Like, hard. You've probably never heard of it either, and I don't blame you, because as much as it was hyped, I guess people just didn't turn out to buy it. I never heard of it. I never saw any commercials for it. And it's another one brought to us by Midway. Because why not? After their raving success with Biofreaks, you know, why not jump into, you know, action platformers too? And the targeting system in the game, you occasionally go into this first-person mode. It's really clunky. The graphics are not horrible, but I would expect a little more from PlayStation 2. I've played some very beautiful PlayStation 2 games, like Ico or Shadow of the Colossus, and this game is nowhere near that level of artistry. In fact, I feel bad even mentioning them in the same paragraph as this game, but here we are. And I played this. I was supposed to play this game for 4 hours of a 24-hour gaming marathon for charity called Extra Life. I think I played it for maybe an hour and a half before I switched to something else because it was that bad. So, Haven, Call of the King, time to call the exterminator. Burn, baby, burn! Thank you, my friend. Your contributions to the cause will not be forgotten. Next game on the list. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles for the GameCube. Now, this might seem like a controversial choice, but I'll explain. This is a special exception to my rule about including games that I've played. I never played this. All the other GameCube games I've played were actually good games. So how could I include the GameCube here? Would seem required, right? Well, here's why. I never got this game because I found out in order to play multiplayer, it requires each player to have their own Game Boy Advance hooked to the system to use as the controller. Now, I don't know of a monetization system that is more scummy than requiring people to buy the handheld console of the time just to play multiplayer in an RPG game. So, alright. You want 4 controllers? Have 4 controllers. There we go. And here we go. Here's a greedy businessman. And, oh, and we'll set your finger on fire. Now, I've heard that there's a remake for PS4 that does not require Game Boy Advances to be used for multiplayer. Maybe I'll check it out. But for now, as for the GameCube version, bye-bye. Next game on the list. Sneak King for the Xbox 360. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Come on, it was just made as a promotion from Burger King. It's not like a super serious game. Go easy on it. But the idea here is worst game I've played on each platform. Well, here it is. My wife gave this to me as a gag gift. So I threw it in, and the whole point of the game is to just sneak up on people and present them with a Whopper. That's it. That's really it. So, it's not a great game by any means. And I realize it was just, done as a sort of promotional fun thing, but let's pile some food around it. Here we have some sushi, and I had someone suggest that I try sushi for my next video, but I was unfortunate in that I could not get a hold of any sushi. So we're doing this instead, but I think this is pretty fun, don't you? So we're going to pile a whole bunch of food around the Sneak King. Put this big old sausage link on top. And you know you love to get your coffee at Burger King. Here we go. Oh yeah, some eggs. Oh, we'll have to be more careful with the eggs. There we go. Love watching those soda cans explode. Bye-bye, Sneak King. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Next game on the list. Wii Fit. Now, I never used this myself, and I'm including it on behalf of Ashley, the other part of Vast Ice Gaming. All the Wii games I've played have been pretty good, so I had to include the Wii somehow, so I'm doing this for her benefit. She never liked Wii Fit. They would apparently penalize you for not being able to balance. I'll actually read her exact notes on it. She says, issues are over-focusing on unobtainable perfect balance. The balance board had janky control, pretty much on par with the Wii remotes being only accurate some of the time. It was also really rude to you if you failed a game. And success was measured by the calories burned, BMI, and if the balance board said you moved too much. Now, without having actually played Wii Fit myself, I don't completely understand that, but I do understand the notions of a game being rude to you, janky controls, and success only being measured by certain things. Now, this is something that affects you in real life, though. Where most video games are purely fantasy, this one actually has a real-life connection in that you try to use it to get healthy. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to freeze Wii Fit. Then, we're going to crush it. Just like it crushed the dreams of all the people that wanted to get fit. Isn't that satisfying? And we'll drop the rest of these bricks on, just so we can clear the space. Dungeon Siege 3. Now, I played this for the PlayStation 3, but I'm using the Xbox 360 cover, because that's just the one I found first, so don't think I'm duplicating or anything like that. But I got this game, Dungeon Siege 3. I never played the first two games. Sort of casually heard of the first two, never really looked into them. Took this game, played it for maybe 2 hours. It's bad. I can't understand. Like, I expected something very similar to, like, the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games from, like, a decade earlier. But it wasn't even on that level. It's grindy. And I honestly can't remember that much about it because I played it for such a small amount of time. But It's bad. I don't like it. And we're going to grind it in this juicer. And we can grind some squirrels. Next game. Bravely Default for the 3DS. Now, this game has a huge following, and there's a sequel, Bravely Second, and people love it and all that and all that. Yeah. Let's take an honest look, though. The game has the job system, very similar to some Final Fantasy games. That's fine, and it was actually kind of fun to unlock the different jobs and this and that. But here's where the game really fell off the rails. Was the whole second half was redoing the same thing over and over, going to the same places, fighting the same bosses, and like trying to like attune these crystals, and the whole time you end up doing something that wasn't what you were really supposed to be doing. You come to find out. A very unsatisfying way to play the second half of the game, and a very unsatisfying ending. And also, they sort of, in my mind at least, flip-flopped what should have gotten you the true ending and what got you the bad ending. I feel like what you ended up doing to get the bad ending should have actually gotten you a better ending, because you choose to do it because it means you put the pieces together yourself, as opposed to going through the whole game and just following along, which ends up getting you the good ending. So anyway, since this game is just a repeat of itself over and over and over again, is that all? Maybe they need some... Burn, Aerie! Burn! Alright, next game. Star Fox Zero for the Wii U. This game sucks. It was basically a remake of Star Fox 64, and if they had just done exactly that, made Star Fox 64 with updated graphics and more levels and, maybe a few other bells and whistles, a couple different game modes or something like that, it probably would have been okay. But they didn't do that. They jacked it up. They jacked up the controls compared to Star Fox 64. It's very... I found the controls to be broken. I really would have preferred to have the controls from Star Fox 64. I mean, they could have at least given you the option, right? But no, they messed it up. So they have janky controls, and they have a couple different other like vehicles, like the walker and stuff, that are just really, really clunky, and there's bad camera work, and just, the worst $60 I've ever spent. Okay? Worst $60 I've ever spent. Here, this shoots straight. See? This is what it means to shoot straight. Shoot straight. Shoot straight. See? That's all you ever had to do, was shoot straight. But no. Let's have dual reticle control. That'll impress the fans. Oh, good. Star Fox deserves way better than Star Fox Zero, let me tell you. And last, but certainly not most least, Dynasty Warriors 9. Now, I started playing Dynasty Warriors games with Dynasty Warriors 4, all the way back in 2003. Now, since then, there really haven't been any games that I would call bad. 7 and 8 are phenomenal. Phenomenal. Especially 8 with the what-if scenarios that you can play through. 6 was a bit of a bump in the road for me with the way they changed so many of the standard voice actors and changed up so many of the signature weapons of the characters. But 9 suffers almost from being too ambitious. It's a huge, like, open world hack and slash. And it has RPG elements because you level your character up and things like that. But it ends up just being tedious. Like, just tedious. You play it for a while and you just don't want to play it anymore because you play it for 6 hours and feel like you haven't accomplished anything. Like, I never even made it all the way through the story mode one time. Because it was just that tedious to play. So we're going to roast it with this Tiki Torch. Go for it, Tiki Torch. Hey, there we go. Zhao Yun, even you couldn't save this game. Well, that'll do it for my least favorite games. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. It was very cleansing. If you can think of another group of things that deserve to be burned in the Little Inferno, please leave me a comment and I will see what I can do about it. For now, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. That will do it for this chapter. Thank you for checking out my channel. If you like my content, please tell me in the comments below, or if you have any general feedback, I'd welcome that as well. Make sure you subscribe so that you're always up to date with all of my latest gaming adventures.